Okay, and we will start right on the dot. It's 5 o'clock on the dot. Hello, everyone. Welcome to one of our department virtual information sessions, specifically for biomedical engineering. Real quick, before we get started, I'll introduce myself and kind of my role in this presentation today. Not really a big one, as it is completely the two lovely people I have with me today. But my name is Liz DeRozier. I'm an admissions counselor at WPI. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been at WPI for about 7 years now. So I've definitely been around the campus and I know a lot about the different departments, but I love being able to see these sessions because they change every year. So I will be here answering questions in the chat. Also, I'll be facilitating questions in the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So please utilize the Q&A feature. And I'm trying to think if there's any other housekeeping. Oh, this is, as you probably know, Zoom webinar format. So you can see us, but we can't see you. So yes, use the Q&A feature. And with that, I will hand it over to my co-hosts here and let them do their thing. So good luck, guys.
Thank you so much, Liz. And welcome, everybody. Gee, I miss seeing you in person, although I usually lie to people and tell people that it's always sunny in Worcester, but I'd be lying if I said today was one of those days if you're joining us from not the New England area. Yeah, today is not a shiny, happy WPI Worcester day, but welcome. Good afternoon, if you're joining us from the East Coast. I'm George Pins. I'm associate department head and a professor. I've been at WPI for about 21 years now. More about me in a minute. So what I hope to do for the next 25 minutes is share a little bit of information with you about the biomedical engineering department at WPI. And then much more interesting than me, I'm going to introduce you to Elsani in a few minutes, who is one of our students who I feel like is one of my kids at this point. I've known Elsani for a long time. And Elsani's story is much more interesting and exciting than my WPI story. My other golden rule, Elsani will be, Elsani's with us the entire time. If you were in person with us at WPI, I'd say just like being at my house at home, feel free to interrupt me. It's actually particularly unnerving for me to talk continuously without being interrupted. If you have questions, Elsani will be on the Q&A the whole time, and feel free to ask questions at any time. So I'll talk for a few minutes. I'll let Elsani chat for a few minutes, and then yeah, we'll take your questions. Hey, Liz, I'm not, oh, I do see, I was gonna say, I don't see that we're recording, but I lied. Okay. So
we got it. We got this figured out.
Awesome.
Thanks, George.
Awesome. So you can follow us also on Twitter, and the department website is below in this, the bottom of this Zoom. So let's go. So first, a little tiny bit about me, if my slides behave themselves. Come on, slides, you got this. They're not going to be. Or they're slow. I was having. Oh, here we go. Okay. So a little tiny bit about me. I didn't actually grow up in New England. I grew up in New York City in the shadows of, I grew up in Northeast New Jersey in the shadows of New York City, and spent my formative years in college at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, one of the oldest schools in the country. Big state university, big school, in my biased opinion, with a fantastic biomedical engineering program, almost as good as WPI's. Graduated with a degree, an undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering, stayed there and did a PhD in biomaterials and tissue engineering. Knew already at that point that I thought that I want to be a professor and go into academia. Moved from North Jersey, which, by the way, explains my accent and some of my sports biases we can talk about offline at the end of this discussion if we have time. After I got my PhD, I moved up to Boston. Knew I wanted to move up to New England. Always loved New England. Everything about it, from the weather to the culture to the academics. Spent 2.5 years at Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School doing research in doing burn research and tissue regeneration, biomem stem cell technology, gene therapy. Spent a couple of years in industry, seeing the way the real world worked, making medical devices for spine replacements and other such things, and had the pleasure of landing at WPI in the year 2000. Moved, knew I wanted to stay in New England, and I wanted to be at a school where I both had the privilege of teaching students and being able to do research and a nice balance. So that's why I picked WPI. Enough about me. As you start thinking about college and majors, biomedical engineering is this person here. This person has all sorts of medical issues going on. We could talk, we'll do a deep dive in a second. What I want the high school students and the parents on this call to know and hear is biomedical engineering, first and foremost, is engineering. And specifically, it is engineering solving problems in biology and medicine and biomedical sciences and healthcare. We can talk offline later how we did. A good set of questions for later is what's the difference between biomedical engineering and, say, mechanical engineering or biotechnology? The big difference between, we get asked this question, what's the difference between biomedical engineering and bioengineering or biotechnology? And the answer in one word is engineering. You are going to learn to be a fundamentally rigorous engineer in one subspecialization of engineering, and you'll learn to apply those skills to solve problems in healthcare. So if we draw our attention here to this person who's got all these circles and robotic things going on, our future body, I draw your attention to the heart in the center of the patient. We can think about a left ventricular assist device, which is an implantable pump that can be used, a computer-controlled system to be used to help the patient prior to bypass surgery or right after bypass surgery so that they don't overload the vessels during healing. It's used for a couple of weeks and then it's taken out and the patients go back to life as begin to the healing process. I bring it up as an example because it's really an engineering problem that touches all kinds of engineering, from electrical. You need a control system, a circuit to control these heart pumps. It's a mechanical engineering problem. It's a fluids problem, right? Fluids is mechanical engineering. There's a mechanical motor in there, but it's also a biomaterials problem. What kind of materials do we make the pump and the valves and the tubes out of that are compatible with the blood cells and the tissue cells in the heart? And it's a healthcare problem. And so it's kind of an overwhelming thing to hear. Oh my goodness, I'm going to go into biomedical engineering. I'll never be able to learn all these things. And you're right, you won't. And that's okay. As a biomedical engineer, through academic advising and through your curriculum, we want you to focus your engineering education on one aspect of that, the part you're most passionate about. We just talked, there's electrical, there's mechanical, there's material science. One area that is the cross between healthcare and medicine and a specific area of engineering you're passionate about. And I should have disclosed this in the first slide. Full disclosure, not only am I a professor here for 20 odd years, but I'm also a parent of 2 college-age children. And so the first question I always ask, and I've done the college tours all over the place, happy to talk about that offline. One of my children, I'm proud to say, landed here. I'm paying a second mortgage for my children to go to school. So are all the parents on this line. What are they going to get out of their second mortgage when they graduate as far as jobs and careers? And so particularly important that biomedical engineering students are focused on one specific area of engineering and healthcare so that they are marketable when they graduate. We want our students to be, our students are the best in the world. You'll meet Elsani soon. So that's that. So that's what biomedical engineering is. The next slide is your homework assignment. No, just kidding. We're going to give you a blank one of these on Zoom and you're going to fill it out when you're in. Why would I put up this crazy mission statement on a slide? Excuse me. Couple of things are important on this slide. First of all, the ABET accreditation. The Biomedical Engineering Department at WPI was one of the first quartile in the nation. There's well over 100 biomedical engineering programs nationwide. We were in the top 25 programs to receive national accreditation. ABET is Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology. It's our quality systems control for the parents out there who work in industries with technical standards and so forth. These are the people we report to that demonstrate the rigor of our program. So the engineering rigor. The other thing I want to draw your attention to are the bold type here of the critical systems thinking. What distinguishes biomedical engineering from, say, electrical or mechanical engineers that solve biomedical problems is, in addition to being good engineers, our biomedical engineering students learn to think across disciplines and be able to function, be able to lead cross-talking teams that include engineers and scientists and other people that are critical, business people that are critical for the industry. Engineering rigor, value creation, we'll talk about that later. Multidisciplinary project-based teams. So thinking back to the slide I just told both the students and the parents, biomedical engineering is multidisciplinary. It's a team sport. You can't do it all, but you get to be part of teams where you get to see all the different pieces. So if I like mechanical engineering, but the electrical stuff was interesting, there'll be an electrical engineer on my team and I'll be able to work with these people across disciplines. So it's fun that biomedical engineering by academic and in the real world is always a team sport. Okay. Equally important to our educational mission is our statement on diversity, equality, inclusion. Not only is it critical for designing important, impactful solutions in the healthcare industry that you really take as we think about cross-cutting solutions to healthcare problems, that we hear all the voices of all the constituents that are going to benefit from our health technology. But as students, as college students coming into a college environment where there's lots of different people, both WPI and the Biomedical Engineering Department are unequivocally committed to respecting and standing up for the rights and the inclusivity of all the different types of people in our community. So that's not just a campus thing, but a biomedical engineering thing. And there's a little bit of evidence of that. This picture is kind of difficult to see because everybody's really small in this picture, but I thought it was really important to show the snapshots. You get on the website, on the front slide that I showed you, you get on the website and you can see the Biomedical Engineering Department. I'm particularly proud of the group of people that we are as faculty and as students, as a diverse group of people that really, with faculty that represent several continents and so many different cultures. And that makes it so much more fun to think about. I grew up in New England, which I love. I grew up in New Jersey and spent the last 25 years in New England. It's a great place to be, but it's not the only place in the world. And the healthcare problems that challenging people of New England aren't the healthcare problems that Elsani's friends in South Africa have to face. And so when I start thinking about solving problems, I need to think about all different perspectives. Okay, that's us. This is a research slide, and as if you're a parent or a student in high school sitting on this call going, oh my God, why is Pinch talking about advanced research, and I do biomaterials and I grow tissue engineered skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. And I had a meeting this morning with a colleague who makes computer maps of traumatic brain injury, and we have faculty who work at the human machine interface. Pretty intimidating stuff but it shouldn't, because what I want you to take away from this slide are two things that's important. First of all, biomedical engineering students from shortly after they arrive on campus, we don't want to see them in research labs until they really have settled into the WPI way, which probably takes their fall semester. But we start welcoming students working in labs by the spring of their freshman year, and they're actually working in labs. They're not, we don't chain them to a sink to wash glassware. They begin to learn to do research. And the Venn diagram here, which gives me flashbacks to my high school geometry class, is important to remind myself and to remind everybody that nothing we do in biomedical engineering is limited to one narrow scope and focus. I saw a talk this morning on understanding muscle, bone, ligament interfaces and traumatic injuries that tear ligaments from bone. That's a mechanics problem, that's a materials problem, and it's an imaging problem. So in my 20 years, I've had the privilege of collaborating on a regular basis and publishing papers with students and faculty in all of these circles in this Venn diagram, and that's pretty typical for most of our faculty. A little tiny bit about our project-based education. Elsani will tell you more. Sorry, one sec. I want to make sure nobody's falling asleep. Elsani will tell you a little bit more, and Liz and your other experience at your other meetings at WPI, you'll learn about our project-based education, the humanities, practicum, the first year, and Elsani will tell you about her IQP. I'll focus on a little bit, I'll tell you a little tiny bit about the MQPs. What I want you to take away from this slide is the fact that projects are not a one-off thing, your global project, your IQP, or your senior design project that we call an MQP, but projects are integrated across the curriculum starting in the first year, team-based, multidisciplinary, and a critical part of particularly the biomedical engineering curriculum is something called entrepreneurial mindset learning and value creation, which sounds like a lot of business speak, but it's actually not. It's really what we mean by value creation and the entrepreneurial mindset is really trying to understand how to solve problems that help your customers instead of being in an ivory tower in a university and thinking you know the solutions to problem. Who are your customers? Sometimes they're social welfare problems. Sometimes they are an art implant, and there's lots of other things. Again, I'll let Elsani share a little bit about that with you. You see the pictures of some of our project teams working on projects, more in a second. And the other thing I'm extremely proud of at WPI, again, I sort of alluded to this in the introductory slide, why I came to WPI. And you see we're in some really good company here. This is a 2016 survey from the Wall Street Journal and Times Higher Education, ranking WPI as the #1 school in the country for balancing teaching and research. There's no faculty here who just do research that don't know their students. They're all in the classroom. They're all sharing their research with our students. The research is integral for having our students graduate, being able to work on the cutting edge of the future of our technological society globally. Lots of buzzwords in there, sorry. A little tiny bit about our curriculum. And I sat here because I'm looking at that beautiful bridge right out the window, but the lighting's not working for me today. So our students all learn to build bridges, paint bridges, kidding aside. Teeny bit about the WPI curriculum in biomedical engineering. The first year you take the engineering curriculum in BME at WPI is no different than any engineer on campus or any other engineer at any other engineering school. It's calculus, it's chemistry, it's physics. Maybe if you're way ahead, you'll get your first biology course or your first class in the first principles of biomedical engineering. Your sophomore year, hence the picture of the Earl Bridge, which is beautifully sitting on it's behind me actually in this, my real backdrop, right? We teach our sophomore year at most schools, including WPI, the students transition from their core engineering curriculum to learning a little bit about the first principles of engineering within their major. So in biomedical engineering, that's mechanics, statics, materials, a first class in material science, a first class in electrical engineering, and a first class in numerical analysis. What make our classes unique, we don't compromise the core curriculum in engineering, but so for example, I teach the first class in material science, instead of trying to understand what material to make this water bottle out of so I can drop it on the floor without it breaking, or I can throw it against something, right? That's material science, what kind of metal or what kind of plastic, yada, yada, yada. The students are handed almost identical problems, but it may be, if I'm going to make an elbow implant with certain forces, what materials do I want to make it out of so that the material will withstand the right properties? So the principles of polymers and metals and ceramics that they would learn about in the material science department in the material science class in, say, mechanical engineering or civil engineering to build a building, instead they're going to get it in biomedical engineering. So by the end of the sophomore year, the students have seen a first class in biomechanics and bioinstrumentation, biomaterials, and numerical analysis, so that when they get to their upper level classes and their design classes, their junior year and their senior year is their labs and their IQP, and senior year, they get to do their senior capstone project. They've got a good sense of what area they want to focus on for their initial career skills. Yeah, so this is a brief list, and these slides will be available. In the interest of time, I'm not going to recite these to you, but again, you can see the sophomore level classes across the curriculum. By junior year, the students through academic advising are urged to focus either instrumentation or mechanics or materials or chemical engineering, and you can focus on an area. So by the time they get to their senior year, they've taken an advanced, again, just use its easiest example is what I do. It's not what all, certainly not what all of our students do, but if they're taking biomaterials, they've had an advanced material science class, and I teach a senior/graduate level course called biomaterial and tissue interactions. And I explained it to my mom once. So if I'm going to design an implantable material, what are the biological responses I need this material to respond to so that it's biocompatible with the body? So I need to know the biology, wound healing, and the material science. If I'm going to make an electrode that's going to stick into the patient's body, what do I want to make it out of? How do I design that? Okay, that's the curriculum. The other part of our curriculum, which the students either love or hate. A lot of our students come to WPI and say, I want to be an engineer because I don't like reading and writing, but I like to do calculations. And so bad news for the students, parents will appreciate this. The real world of engineering is critical to be a clear and concise communicator, which I'm doing my best to do today. Students start doing oral and written presentations in our classes starting in the first year as team-based projects, communication skills, time management, setting goals and priorities. All of our projects require that our students learn to set goals and prioritize their time, work with practical constraints, and again, this entrepreneurial mindset learning, critical thinking, cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary thinking, and solving what we say are important, impactful global problems. And what that's a lot of buzzwords, but what that means is when I say solving important problems, if I'm going to go on an IQP to Thailand, what do the people in that village in Thailand need from me? I'm not going to go in there and tell them, I've got this great stuff. This is what you need to do to build a Wi-Fi system. You go and you meet with the people that we're partnering with in the village and say, so what's the problem that you need help with? That's what we mean by value creation. Okay. Our junior level design, our capstone design process. I've taught this class a few times. The students have 7 weeks. They were given a crazy one sentence project pitch. And then by the end of 7 weeks, they have to, using the iterative engineering design problem, they have to identify their users' needs and build something. And you can see, for example, here in the bottom right-hand corner, one of the challenges one year the professor who taught the class said, so if you go into the developing world, moms with little kids who have to breastfeed their children, that's how little children usually eat. Well, they have to go to work and they have to pump milk during the day while they're not with their kids, but they don't necessarily have refrigeration. So can you, for $25 or $50, make a breast pump that the moms can use in the office that's obviously discreet and professional, and will also keep the milk cold until they get home? And you can see the project there. There have been patents on this, and Elsani will tell you more about her cool project. This is the kind of stuff they do in their first design class. At the end of 7 weeks, they have to get up with their prototype and pitch it. I don't say they necessarily have to demonstrate it. They're not always demonstratable, but they have to be able to have an artifact in hand and show the class how to use it. So that's our design curriculum, our senior level project. Super quickly, I'm trying to be mindful of the time here. Senior capstone design projects are oftentimes the students get together as a multidisciplinary group of 3 or 4 students, depending on their personal passions. Sometimes they work in professors' laboratories on research. Sometimes they work in the medical school. Sometimes they work in with companies. I've done all of these things, different iterations. What you're looking at here is an optimization of a sternal fixation technique. Oh, I should have brought that with me. Sorry. This is a project I worked on with Professor Billy Arn, the chief of plastic surgery. Said, here's the problem. You can see it in the upper left-hand corner is what looks like your ribs and your sternum, your breastplate. When you have emergency bypass surgery, the cardiologist not too worried about your sternum because if they don't get to your heart pretty quickly, your sternum doesn't really matter. So they're gonna take a bone saw and they split your chest open, they split right through the sternum, crack your ribs, fix your heart, and then when they're done, they put these, they look like twisty ties for garbage bags, and that's what the surgeons call them. They're stainless steel medical cerclage wires, and they wrap around the sternum, and they twist, and they lock, and they work most of the times. But if you're diabetic or osteoporotic or morbidly obese, sometimes when you cough, just like it's horrible to think about, but just like cutting cheese with a wire, you'll cough and those wires will tear right through that. So I had a team of mechanical engineers and material scientists and imaging students work on a project where they were actually, you can see on the far left is a picture. They made a model of the mechanical model of the cyclic breathing motion of the ribs. They put a series of plates on these ribs and they came up with a novel way to replace these wires with bone plates that the plastic surgeon would normally use for plastic and reconstructive surgery, like put a jaw back together after an accident, and start thinking about how we can model this, a finite element model, these pretty color pictures on the right, and be able to come up with something that the students actually published papers on. Citing, this is not such an unusual MQP project. This is for both the parents and kids. What do you do when you graduate? About 2/3 of our students end up going straight into the workforce. About 25% end up go straight to graduate school, military or volunteer, nonprofit opportunities. And this particular year, which is last year during COVID, we're still tracking about 8% of those. And here's a starting salary for biomedical engineers, which is consistent with industry standards and WPI engineering alums. Where do they end up? Well, in the interest of, sorry, clock here. These are different, our biomedical engineering graduates end up in the pharmaceutical industry, R&D, med device companies, manufacturing, academics, and you can see some of those are not starting salaries on the bottom of this image, but these are average salaries of your employed biomedical engineers across the spectrum. Again, study there for, you guys can see this on your own time, and you can see across the top here, biomedical engineering continues to be one of the top ranked jobs. There are no shortage of, my wife and I have a bunch of students and colleagues that work in the biomedical engineering real world, so to speak. And there is actually, if anything, they're always looking for new people. No shortage of jobs. Our biomedical engineering students work, Massachusetts is one of the largest concentrations of med device companies of any state in the country. The companies on the right are all Massachusetts. I won't say Massachusetts based, but all have large operations in Massachusetts. J&J's world headquarters. Well, nope, sorry. J&J's, I won't say their world headquarters. I actually think they're in New Jersey. But J&J has a huge presence in Southeast Massachusetts. Smith & Nephew, Boston Scientific's world headquarters are in Massachusetts, about half an hour east of here. Covidien, Philips, Medtronic is one of the largest pacemaker companies, et cetera. They work in R&D, they work in engineering design, regulatory, project management. I'll skip this slide in the interest of time. And biomedical engineering is also great training, pre-professional programs, not required, really important to hear. You can certainly get a competitive engineering job in biomedical engineering with a bachelor's degree, but it turns out to be a stepping stone, not just for master's and PhD programs, but everything from law school and dental school to medical school, veterinary school, and so forth. Coming to the end of my slides, proud parent, put my switch hats and put my proud parent hat on. These are my WPI alumni kids, are at some of the peer institutions, some of my favorite schools where we have large cohorts of students and alums studying Brown and Rutgers and Harvard, Cornell, and so on and so forth. Our students end up doing graduate degrees in some schools that are almost as good as WPI. And our students are award-winning. I like to brag about this because I've had the distinct pleasure of mentoring a couple of these students. Any typical institution will boast about the 1 or 2 Goldwater or Marshall Scholars or whatnot that they get on any given year. These are the awards and the numbers of awards in the last 15 years, not for WPI, but for the Biomedical Engineering Department. So perhaps because of the project-based education and because our biomedical engineering students work on real-world important problems, they are highly competitive for a lot of these distinguished awards. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, the male to female ratio in the biomedical engineering department is better than the rest of campus. We're probably close to 2/3 female. And finally, we were doing Can Jam and Cornhole last weekend with the undergraduates and the graduate students. We've got a great group of students and a ridiculously pathologically competitive group of faculty, and we don't skip any opportunity to compete against the undergrads. You can see volleyball, flag football, pie eating competition. Our department has a pretty competitive pie eater. And I think that's, I will hold questions till the end. I'll certainly stick around and make sure you get all your questions answered. You can see in the upper right-hand corner here, that's the research facility. My lab is actually right, I don't know if you can see my mouse. My lab is right there in the, I can draw. I won't draw. So that's a little bit about the program. Re-enter Elsani. Good to see your face again. I'm going to stop screen sharing and I am going to let anything. So Elsani is one of our wonderful, Liz and I were just talking before we joined in. Elsani's story is a pretty special one. You can see on this her title slide, Elsani has an undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering from WPI. And you have her contact information. She'll be happy to share it with you offline. Elsani knows every in and out of everything about WPI, unlike almost anybody I've met here. Liz was saying, Elsani used to work in the admissions office once upon a time, and she's worked in lots of different offices and niches and campuses, and her story is a really fun one. So I'm going to shut up now.
All right, thank you, George. So like Professor Pin said, my name is Elsani van Zijl. I'm originally from South Africa, so I am here as an international student. I did most of my high school education between Dubai and Johannesburg, and then came here for my undergraduate degree where I graduated in 2017. I got my Master's of Engineering here in 2019, and I'm now in the 5th year of my PhD, so hopefully my final year. I originally wanted to become a biomedical engineer because of this little girl in the picture. South Africa has an extremely high burn rate or burn injury rate among its population, mostly because a large group of the people in South Africa use paraffin lamps as their primary heating and cooking sources, which can easily be knocked over and cause burn injuries. So this little girl got hurt at a barbecue with her family where the lighter fluid bottle exploded onto her and she sustained burn wounds across 70% of her body. They ended up needing to put her into a medically induced coma because all the things they tried in South Africa weren't working for her injuries. Her parents ended up reaching out to a company that's actually in Boston, and they were able to overnight fly skin grafts to her, which ultimately saved her life. So for me, it was this very strange concept that we needed to rely on different places to help our people when we're considered the medical hub of Africa. So that's really what sparked my interest in biomedical engineering. Before I decided on WPI, I took my father on 12 different college tours in 2 weeks. I was definitely his favorite child at the time. And WPI really stood out to me across all of those. I felt very at home and comfortable here, and I felt like I didn't need to prove myself and that WPI already wanted me. I was also really interested in the project-based learning, as well as the 7-week terms and the opportunities to travel for the different projects. As a student here, I was very involved. I was a swimmer on the swim team as an undergrad. I also participated in intramural sports. I joined a host of clubs, was a part of Greek life. I volunteered, so I was a tour guide for the admissions office, and I also volunteered in Professor Pins's lab as an undergrad. I also had about 3 different jobs on campus, so I definitely kept myself busy. For my interactive qualifying project, so this is the project that you do your 3rd year, I had the opportunity to go to New Zealand, where we were used as an outside group coming in because my project focused on this lake just outside of Wellington that was being given back to the Maori people as a restitution for when the colonizers came to the island. So we were there because the lake had been changed a lot since it had been taken from the people. And these barrage gates were installed to prevent flooding because it's surrounded by farmland. So we were there to interview the local Maori people, the farmers, as well as any other stakeholders in regards to this lake to try and see if we could identify any conflicts that might arise during the process of this lake being handed over. So this project is not supposed to be anything to do with your major, but rather it helps you use your engineering mindset in a more social science setting. For the things I was able to do as an undergrad in the biomedical engineering department, I was able to get 3 different internships. One of them, I worked in General Electric's ultrasound department, where I was able to play with all their different sized wands and ultrasound machines. I then had 2 internships that were just outside of Boston. So 7 Sense Biosystem makes a small blood collection device that uses microneedles that attaches to the upper part of your arm. I was actually able to test this device on myself to see how painful it was, and it feels like someone just flicked you. The other company that I worked at was Third Pole Therapeutics, and they worked with making a device that you would install into a ventilator that created nitric oxide, which is used for babies that are born with high blood pressure in their lungs. For on campus, I was able to volunteer in Professor Pins's lab. And then for my BME design, so biomedical engineering design class, we were posed with the challenge of making something that could be used to diagnose malaria in a region that doesn't have consistent electricity or running clean water. So my group was able to design this little microscope that's in the middle of the slide here that you would then plug into your phone. It would use power from the audio jack to light up a little LED at the bottom of the microscope. And we were able to get our microscope to be effective enough to be able to see the nuclei of these rat heart cells. And this design also, we were able to submit it for an innovation challenge, and my team won a $5,000 award for it. For my major qualifying project, I had the opportunity to do it in Professor Pins's lab. At the time, his lab was working on something called volumetric muscle loss. So this is when you lose a large portion of a muscle. This could be due to sports injuries, shrapnel injuries, but you lose a large chunk of the muscle. And because of how muscle works, you kind of need the whole length of it to be able to contract it effectively. So we were trying to make this scaffold that would allow your cells to align when you put it into this muscle divot to try and grow functional regenerative tissue in this area. So that was what I was able to do for my major qualifying project. I then decided that I wanted to do the BSMS program. So I applied to the BSMS program. So I finished my undergrad in 4 years and then started my master's. But a lot of my classes as an undergrad counted towards my master's, and I had enough space in my schedule to start graduate classes as an undergrad. I then realized that I really enjoyed the science that I was doing. So I swapped over to my PhD. So I got my master's in engineering, which is a course-based master's, and my thesis that I was originally working on moved over to being my PhD thesis. and I'm now in the Coburn lab. So for my PhD, I'm working with kombucha. Kombucha grows this layer at the top. This layer I bumped, so it's now at the bottom, but this is usually floating at the top. And this layer is made out of pure cellulose. You're able to make it into these different shapes depending on what you grow it in. And we've figured out a way to make it transparent. So we're now looking into how to make it into an effective wound dressing that could be used on venous ulcers or burn wounds possibly in the future. So we're doing this by ensuring that this transparency is maintained and also incorporating some antibacterial properties into our material. Once I'm done with my PhD, I'm hoping to go into industry and work on scaffolds or medical devices that are able to impact people very effectively and improve their quality of life. So that is me. Are there any questions? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you both so much. Oh, George is muted.
A lot of people tell me that's a good thing.
Oh my goodness, I was just
We won't-
typing an answer to something. So let me see if I can go back.
I am also. So can Liz, yeah, can the students actually speak, or is it just Q&A and chat?
It's just Q&A and chat, unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm hoping that, let me say a little bit more about the questions I just answered.
Oh, good idea.
I want Elsani to chime in for sure. There was a question about, I want to back up if I can. So the last question I just answered. So Liz, maybe you can answer the question about, this is a common question. What percentage of students go to medical school? It's a small number, but that's, the reality is that's not every high school student. I was just telling my own kids this. Every high school student thinks they want to go to medical school when they get to college.
So true.
I don't know what, I was just listening to a very famous person. What was I just, oh yes, I was listening to, the students all know what Dude Perfect is, the biggest YouTube channel, one of the biggest YouTube channels ever. And they were interviewing one of the people from Dude Perfect. These are these sports guys who do all this crazy stuff. And one of them said, I wanted to go to dental. So I went to college going to dental school, and then I took orgo. So that's not uncommon. That's not an uncommon story. BME's good prep for great prep.
Definitely.
Well, maybe you have numbers, Liz.
So what I was going to say is I don't have exact numbers about the amount of students that go on, but I will say I do know that our acceptance rate to medical school is over 60%. And I know that that's higher than the national average. That's what I've been told. So although I don't know the exact numbers, I can tell you that we have a wonderful pre-health program on campus that if you do want to be, if you do want to go into medical school, they absolutely prepare you for that. I actually think there could possibly be a virtual information session about pre-health, I think.
There
so
is.
you're in,
yeah, oh,
perfect. So, and I don't know off the top of my head when it is, I'm so sorry, but folks, if you want to check that out, please do. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn more about that. We have a wonderful department on our campus that's fully devoted to helping our students with the pre-health. And we call it pre-health because there are a couple different ways to take it. So, but yes,
pre-med, pre-vet. We have a lot of the BAs go to become physician's assistants.
Right, exactly.
Reasons.
Yeah.
There's a question here about the student to faculty ratio.
Yes.
I don't know if
Yeah, I was going to say, you actually answered it perfectly, George. I was going to say it's pretty much like that for the beginning classes or for what we usually say. So on average, it's about a 13-to-1 student to faculty ratio, and that's average. So as you stated, I mean, there are classes when you're a first year student that are larger, but as you get, as you stated, as you get more specified into your major and kind of get closer, you're definitely having smaller classes. So, and even if you are in larger classes, and Elsani, maybe you can speak to this, but I feel like you're still getting that one-on-one interaction with your professor in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that I think is very important to note, that you're not just a lost person in a crowd of students. Like, you will still be able to interact with your professors.
Yeah, definitely. My high school graduating class was 53 students. So I
my
came from a
gosh.
very small school, and not a lot of people took STEM classes. So I was like in class sizes of like 8 or 9 people. So I was very worried about coming to college where classes were bigger, but WPI definitely does a really good job, especially with if you have those bigger classes in the beginning, your chemistry and your physics classes, you have a lot of support, not just your professor, but your TAs and people who are grading. There are help sessions on campus. There are office hours for you to go and talk to the professor, and they also break down into smaller conference groups. So there's always an opportunity for you to go and get help if you need it.
That's wonderful.
Oh, I
And with,
can.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, George.
So I'm going to put my parent hat on for a second. And
Oh,
while
please do.
my younger one is just finishing his math and physics core at WPI, and these classes are big, not big compared to, so I went to a state university. My freshman chemistry and calculus physics classes had actually stadium seating with 450 people in them. So that's not a thing here.
Oh my goodness.
These are 100 and change. And I know that my child, first of all, the classes are taught by professors always, almost with a rare exception of a lecture or two if I have to go to a meeting or something. The classes are not, even though Elsani could probably do a better job than me. The classes are taught by the professors, but the students have, I won't say unbridled access because that's a dangerous thing, but my child has never had trouble, even in his large chemistry and calculus class, physics and calculus classes, being able to interact with professors and TAs. And as Elsani said, so many support, in addition to, it's outside the scope of this discussion, healthcare support, but remedial help if you have stuck with something. We have multiple layers of help groups for students.
Definitely. That's what's a wonder. And I think that's a great place to kind of stop here, because we are out of our little time frame here. So I want to say thank you again to Professor Pins and to Elsani for taking the time to hang out today and talk about their experiences and what it's like at WPI. I think that was a really good way to kind of sum everything up and still really, dedicate your time to the BME program. So thank you both so much. And everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. This session is being recorded, so if you do want to rewatch it, definitely feel free to come back and check out our website. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us at admissions. It's just admissions@wpi.edu. And I think that's it.
We do have on-campus tours, right, John?
Oh, yes, that's what I was going to say. Oh my gosh, thank you, George. So please check out our website too. We are offering on-campus visits. So please, if you can, we would love to see you on campus. We're really welcoming, I believe, I think for our open houses right now, they're not our traditional open houses, but we do have, we're offering a lot of options. So please check out our website for that. And if you have questions, definitely let us know. And with that, thank you all so much and have a great evening, everyone. Bye, guys.